Welcome back. In this video, I'll introduce you to the new template, which is Literature Review Template. This document aims to help the researchers or students to perform a detailed literature review. Let's try understanding why do you require a detailed literature review. Understanding the related works or doing a literature review is an important phase in both projects as well as in the research. Literature review or a survey becomes an important section in all your thesis, dissertations, reports, and papers. Literature review is significant from three standpoints. Number one, building appropriate background or motivation or to establish the need for the research or the project or the new set of solutions. This is the first one. Second one, in order to formalize the theoretical basis of your proposed idea. And the third one, positioning your idea with respect to already existing works, which we call it as benchmarking with the SOTA methods. When I say literature review, there are some commonly asked questions. Let me try answering those. When should I do the literature review? Is it at the beginning of the project? Is it at the end? Or when should I do it? My answer is you should be able to carry out this literature review multiple phases because the intentions of doing literature review at different phases of your project is different. Initially, at the beginning of your project, you may have to do literature review in order to validate your direction or to check how potential is the idea that you're working with, or to identify appropriate gaps, you may have to do a literature review. Or sometimes to understand what is the current trend, you have to do the literature review at the beginning of your project or a research. Later, in the subsequent phases, in order to understand what are the different approaches followed by your fellow researchers to tackle similar or a same problem. And finally, at the later stages of your project, you may have to carry out a literature review such that whatever is your obtained results out of the proposed methodology to compare it with the existing methods or benchmarking with the state of art or SOTA methods, you need to carry out a literature review to justify your research contribution. Well, I understood that significance of literature review. How many papers should I read in order to say that I have done a good literature review? Answer to this question is very subjective. It depends on what is the purpose for which you are doing a literature review. Then, in that case, you may ask upon, like, are there any different methods to carry out this literature review based on their depth? Yes. The popular research methods include typical narrative methods, which goes on describing like so and so authors have done like this, so and so authors have done like this. So that is a typical kind of a narrative reviews you can look in most of the papers. The other types of reviews include SLR, which stands for Systematic Literature Review, and the other one is meta-analysis and scoping reviews. These are popularly known different methods of literature review. However, there exist other variants of literature review as well, which include critical review, theoretical review, integrative review, historical review, methodological review, cross-disciplinary review, descriptive review, rapid reviews, conceptual reviews, and library research. These are the other terminologies you hear upon whenever you say that is a literature review. Then, in this template, we will be following something called as systematic literature review. And the framework that we will be using is the PRISMA framework, which stands for Preferred Reporting Items for Systematic Reviews and Meta-Analysis Framework. There are various steps in it. Let us try understanding step one by one. The first step is formulating the research questions or the project objectives. Why this is important is the clarity about the research questions or the project objectives will help you to scope the literature review. What all things that you have to cover? So that is further dependent on the kind of formulated research question or the project objectives. Sample questions are written here, sample project objectives and the sample research questions are written here. Project objectives are written if your focus is to provide solution to some of the problem. That is a project objective. Research question, if you are inquisitive mind and if you are a researcher or if you are carrying out your PhD, postdoctoral, you will be writing a research question, and that is a differentiator between project objectives and research questions. Right. So examples are given here along with the references. You may refer those papers in order to get a better clarity regarding the project objectives and research questions. For example, the first one you can take, build a multi-class emotion detection model that can classify emotions from the facial expressions through video feeds for a customer feedback system. This clearly shows that what are you trying to do? Say multi-class emotion detection. That means classification operation you are doing. There are multi-classes of emotion involved in it. And what are you capturing in order to say the emotion? You are capturing the facial expressions. From where? It is from video. For what? It is for customer feedback system. So essentially it includes all the essentials of a project objective. It should be clear, it should be distinct, and it should be self-explanatory. That means it should be self-sufficient. By reading this, you should be able to understand the context in which you are trying to carry out the project. What are you trying to do? Why are you trying to do? And some part of how. Example, in the form of input data. Okay, so that will help you to formulate a clear project objectives. Say, on the other hand, if you are a researcher and you want to understand like what is the breadth of the research, right? You may formulate a research questions like this. How technology enabled data sources are trying to help to capture the latent learning indicators. Latent is something which is hidden, which is not visible directly, right? So latent learning indicators of student learning in an online environment. Or what are the other domains of intelligent tutorial system based on the body movement applications detected using a computer vision? These are the kind of research questions that you can ask. This formulating a research question becomes very, very important part of your systematic literature review, because in the step 2, we are trying to extract keywords from these project objectives or the research questions. Some of the points to consider are, when you're writing a single keyword or there might be a multiple keywords, say example, machine learning. So if you want to say like this is together, so put it in double quotes so that your database understands it as a single word. So other points to remember is avoid using names of a country, name of the university as a keywords. A simple thumb rule is try emerging out the keywords from the formulated and approved project objectives or the research questions. And please remember, keywords are set to emerge and get refined over the time. Typically, how many keywords are you supposed to identify? Somewhere around 3 to 5 keywords are sufficient such that your search is meaningful. And step 3 is setting the search criteria. So setting the criteria can be Say suppose you can use a filter criteria of the database. I will show the demo of this, and it is already available in the video with reference 5. At 5th minute and 16 seconds, I have shown you this using this filter criteria. Please refer to that video to set your search criteria. Say search criteria can include in terms of number of years. Say suppose I want to carry out a literature and try understanding in last 1 decade what has happened. So that can be one of your filter criteria. So along with the machine learning, I want to use vision as a input data. So that can be also a search criteria, and where you can use Boolean operators like and or, such that your research search results become more and more clear and distinct. Simple thumb rule says that if your search results exceeds 1,000 papers, right, either your keywords are absolute, not so good, or there is enough research which is already carried out. There is very less scope for you to carry out some research or a project in that direction. Or if you find like there are very less number of papers or no papers are found, that means please go back and relook into your keywords and Boolean operators. So whatever is your criteria that you are going to use, please mention them in this box. Coming to the databases, step 4 is a databases, which some of the databases are listed here: IEEE Digital Library, Scopus, Web of Science, ASM Digital Library. Okay, and I have already spoken about many other databases at in the video number 6, which is shown here at 11:04 minute. So I have spoken about this. So if you want to know more about the databases, please go back and revisit this video. And so I'll be using IEEE Digital Library database. So, however, you have several advantages and limitations of using different databases. Say, example, Scoopus gives you directly the some important information, which otherwise by using other databases you have to do it manually. The Scoopus gives you directly, which you can directly import it in your papers. So, like that, we have pros and cons of using each and every database. Further, remember, your institution might not have subscribed for all the databases. There might be few databases which might not be subscribed. Please, whatever is available, try carrying out on that database. In addition, you can use even the AI tools such as SciSpace. SciSpace is the one which I have used, which is very useful, right? So how do I search papers and how do I use the SciSpace effectively for the literature review? I've shown this in the reference 7. Please go and refer to that video in order to understand how I can use SciSpace as a tool for literature review. That completes your step 4. Right. Please mention like what are the databases that you are using here and what are the AI tools that you are using here. Please mention it. And you can, in addition, you can take out a screenshots of it, okay, such that say whenever you want to prove something to your supervisor or somebody, so you have those screenshots along with the dates. So the next part is choosing a framework for your literature review. So where I'll be using systematic literature review will be carried out using a framework called as PRISMA. PRISMA stands for Preferred Reporting Items for Systematic Reviews and Meta-Analysis. This is a framework which we will be using to carry out the systematic literature review. So this PRISMA framework has various versions of it. So in the reference 9, you can go and check out the different versions. But anyhow, so I have prescribed a version of that Prisma framework, which is applicable in most of the cases. You can try including the same framework. So this Prisma framework describes the process of SLR through 3 phases. One is identification, screening, and inclusion. If you go and download the template, it something looks like this, where You can see the phases: identification phase, screening phase, and inclusion phase. There are three phases. Say example, you are choosing IEEE Explore as a database. Mention that here. IEEE IEEE Digital Explorer and SciSpace as a tool. So whatever is the other tools that you other databases, say suppose I'm using Scopus, I'm using Web of Science, right? So mention all those things. So whenever you type those keywords along with the Boolean operators, right? So say mention the databases. Say I'm using three databases. Then so what other see when I type the keywords, you might come across with across the databases. You might come across with the different papers, right? So you may have to avoid some duplicates. Avoid duplicates. Say suppose I'm searching some paper on the IEEE Explore and I'm using Scoopers as a database and searching. You might get the same paper in both the databases. Okay, hence duplicate removal has to be done. Say now three databases. I have identified three databases: Scoopers, WOS, and IEEE Data Explorer, and that I have written n is equal to 3. So next, duplicate records be removed. So how many duplicates have you removed? Right. Records marked as ineligible by automation tools. Say suppose sometimes it gives you a database gives you saying that so these many articles have been removed because they are the repetition. So in case if you find such things, please mention that. So next comes screening. Okay. What is that inclusion and exclusion criteria you have applied such that you are able to screen out few things? Say you may initially get when you search with the keywords, you may get some 500 papers. After screening, when I say you are including some inclusion criteria and exclusion criteria. Let us go back and try understanding what is this inclusion and exclusion criteria. So exclusion criteria can be excluding, say suppose I don't want to I don't want to look at the papers which are very old. That can be one of your exclusion criteria. Say suppose in 1980s what happened, I don't want to look into it. That's fine. So you can set that exclusion criteria. Say I don't want to look into the conference papers. I want to review only the journal papers. So that is also can be one of your exclusion criteria. I don't want to do any paper read any paper which are not peer reviewed. So that also can be your exclusion criteria. While on the other hand, inclusion criteria can be early access papers, patents. So let's look at the demonstration of these two things: identification phase and screening phase. Say I'm using IEEE Explore library. Say I'll directly go to the advanced search options. So I will include some terminology, some search terms or the keywords that you have identified. Say I will type multimodal and I will type, see, this is a Boolean operator. When you click on this, I get a Boolean operators and or not. These are the Boolean operators. Then I will include something called as multimodal deep learning. Say when I use this like this, deep learning has to be considered as one word. So I'll put it in the double quotes. So this is one. You may set n number of Boolean operators and go on using this addition symbol. Or if I don't have any other operators, so I can click on this. Then publication date also I can set. Right. Say suppose I'll say publication year. I will say these are some of the inclusion and exclusion criteria. Right. So I say 2004, 2012 to 2025. Okay, then I'll click on the search window, right? So even you can filter out something here. So I want to include only early access data, right? I will click on this part to include only early access. That is, this is your inclusion criteria. Say I want to include only journals, right? I will say apply. Say you can see now, without applying this filters, I had 5,771 papers between the years 2012 to 2025. Now I will apply this criteria. You can observe the number 5771 to 1946, right? By applying this criteria, so you have eliminated so many 5776 to 1946. So many papers have got eliminated by applying the inclusion and exclusion criteria. Further, you have options based on to select affiliations, right? You want to look into the papers with particular uh, university or particular journals. Okay, say this number indicates that IEEE access, I have 394 papers. IEEE transactions on multimedia, I have 131 papers. Right, IEEE transactions on geoscience and remote sensing, 117 I have, like this. So this information is very, very important. I'll say about the step in the descriptive analytics state. So when you are writing a results section, so in the SLR paper, this plays a very, very important role. So how many papers are there with included with the data sets? If you click on this and say apply, see here, only 14 results. So after you have applied that, so you have only few papers, right, where you have the multimodal and deep learning as a criteria. And what are the filters that you have applied? Journals are there, early access articles are there with the data sets, and 2012 to 2025. So these are the criteria that you have applied in order to filter out some of the papers. So I'll go back to the template. So records screened, records excluded. So you may have to write that number, the difference number you can write here. And one more important thing is, so when you're searching for a paper, you can see like, so some of the papers have this unlock symbol and some of the papers have lockout symbol. So my institution mostly have all access to all the papers. I don't have any paper which are not accessible, right? So sometimes you will get a red symbol with lock symbol here. That means that, so it is not under your subscription. So those papers you can include it here. Okay, so though you have sought for retrieval, okay, how many papers you were planning to retrieve it and how many could not retrieve it, right? And reasons for eligibility. So next is reasons for eligibility. This you can decide. So by just looking at the title, re-looking at the title manually, and maybe like abstract, if you read, you get to know like whether it fits for your screening. It comes under your project objective or a research question or not. If you are excluding something, please write a reason why you are excluding that. Right. So, and then finally, what is the number of studies that you are including in your review or number of papers that you are going to download and read the papers. Okay. So that this entire table gets filled. Say, suppose I have used one database. If you have used identification of studies via other methods, when I say other methods, directly you can search in Google or be mindful of when you're searching on a Google, it has to be from a particular journal or a good database, authenticated database. Or you can use some AI tools, right, in order to mention this here. Or one more thing is citation searching is right. So you must have referred some papers in the template one, the base papers that you have considered and done it. So those papers, so the reference section of those papers can help you to find some more papers that also can be under the category of identification of studies via other methods sources. Right. Similarly, the entire process to be carried on. So from identification phase to inclusion phase, your number of papers will drastically get reduced, right? It is some manageable number. Maybe 25 papers, 30 papers, 40 papers are the papers which you are going to study thoroughly to understand, okay, to define the path of your research or your project. So what are the advantages? When I go for a SLR, what is that? SLR, when I do this and say like this is a systematically method that I have followed, okay, there are several advantages. One is you get a good breadth knowledge of the entire project or the objectives के लिए, like whatever you require, you will have a good hold on all those concepts and you fairly understand like how people have been trying to solve such a problem or a similar problem. Okay, since SLR is a well accepted method, okay, it is considered to be one of the rigorous scientific methodology and it is replicable. Say, provided I use the same keywords and same filter criteria. You are mentioning all these things in a paper, right? So I'm using a filter criteria like journals, early access articles with data sets 2012 to 25. So these are the criteria which your filter criteria you're setting. So irrespective of wherever you are, so some paper, some person applies the same criteria, same filter criteria, they should be able to get the same papers. Right. That is why it is called as SLR is said to be called as a replicable process. And other advantages is so it is a very good start for any early researcher and which is quite easy because this handholds you and it is quickly publishable and very well highly cited papers. You get very good citations for SLR papers because you have done a thorough literature review on the entire, on the breadth of the your topic. So that is the advantage of going for a SLR papers. So once you complete this, you have something called as a literature synthesis part. So since the video has become very long, so I'm trying to break this video at this stage, right? So we have completed till step 5. So where you are completing this table and next thing is literature synthesis. After reading those papers which are there in the inclusion section, how do you represent your results? That becomes your literature synthesis section. So see you in the next video with the more details about the literature synthesis. Thank you. And before I close the video, I would like to show you some of the references which you can refer such that I was showing you about reference 1 to reference 5, I suppose. So you can browse these things for more details. See you in the next video. Thank you.